This is how alcohol affects your workout, your exercise, your athletic performance. I know there's a big movement right now for the sort of cessation of alcohol and abstaining from it as much as possible. And I've always been a big proponent of that. But when it comes down to the workout performance, it's always confused me because there are really top tier athletes that I know of that still treat themselves to alcohol, and they do it quite on the regular. So what I'm understanding from this research is that if that were to stop, they might even be better athletes. Let's dive into how this works. Maybe it'll encourage you to make a change. After today's video, check out Thrive Market. Now, specifically related to this video, Thrive Market carries something called Hop Water, HOPWTR. This is a really cool beverage that is made from hops that still gets you like a nootropic effect, but it's really good for people that are coming off alcohol. I have zero fiduciary obligation to say anything about hop water. This is my own personal experience and my experience in helping people get off of alcohol, where I've found that hop water works really well. So Thrive Market does carry that, but they also are an online membership-based grocery store. So anything that you want, including hop water, you can just search for, but also sort by different diet category and shop by diet category. So that link is down below and it saves you 30% off your entire first grocery order, plus a free gift. So definitely recommend you check them out. It's awesome, and it can change how you shop forever. So that link is down below. So here's what happens when alcohol enters your system. Okay, there's a couple of things metabolically that happen first. Alcohol converts into acetaldehyde, and acetaldehyde is literally a toxin for the liver, right? So the liver has to prioritize all metabolism of that first, okay? So it deals with the ethanol, deals with the acetaldehyde, and all metabolism, everything like that, takes a back seat until that's done. But that's not really a big issue for you with your athletic performance because you're probably not working out drunk. And if you are, you have bigger problems like dropping a dumbbell on your foot or your face. But it's still important to note that from a metabolic level, things change. Now, what we're also starting to see within the research is that alcohol impairs something called gluconeogenesis, or G&G for short. Now, G&G is where the liver takes other substrates, fat, protein, and it converts them into glucose, okay? Now, this sounds like a bad thing. You're like, why would I want to break down my protein into glucose? Well, it's actually very important when you're working out because your liver is trying to help make sure that you have sufficient amount of glucose in the bloodstream. If you are impeding this, then you are making it so that you run the risk of going hypoglycemic or at the very least, dips in blood sugar that will impact your performance as far as glycolytic pathways are concerned, being able to draw glucose into a cell for oxidation to create energy. But that's a really small scale thing. What we're seeing in the research is what's happening is much more as far as a muscle contraction is concerned and dehydration. So we'll talk about both of those. It's very, very nuanced, but also very, very cool stuff. So alcohol inhibits calcium channel actions within the muscle cell. Now in English, what that means is it's basically stopping the action or slowing the action of calcium in a muscle cell to allow that muscle cell to essentially contract, okay? So if the muscle cell cannot contract, you lose contractile strength. Obviously it doesn't stop them from contracting altogether, otherwise you wouldn't be able to move your body when you drink, okay? But it limits that contractile strength. When you need to move a muscle, it starts in your brain. You send an action potential down your nerves with sodium, potassium kind of bouncing off of each other and creating this energy that's coming down your nerve, or signal action potential. And that goes to the muscle cell, and then calcium takes over and triggers this contraction. And then magnesium, potassium play a role in sort of the relaxation. And it's kind of complex after that. But the simplicity of it is if calcium's not in the equation or limited, you lose contractile strength. Okay, that's one thing, but again, we're not working out drunk, but this effect can last the day after drinking as well, believe it or not. There's sort of a muscle relaxant effect that comes with alcohol, which we all know because people drink alcohol when they're in pain. But anyway, let's put that away. The dehydration piece is a huge one because what happens is for every 1 gram of alcohol, you lose about 10 milliliters of water. Doesn't sound like much, but that adds up quickly. Now, when you lose that much water, that's already putting you to a pretty dehydrated state. Plus, you're probably not rehydrating properly when you're drinking. Not to mention that you have a vasodilation effect that occurs So if you've ever looked at someone that's been drinking, usually they're like kind of veiny and they're flush and they're red. That's because they have more blood flowing to the extremities and to the surface, to the periphery. And what happens there is evaporation occurs. So it's like when you were to go out for a run, you'd get more vascular because you're trying to cool and you have evaporation that happens. Well, with that, you lose even more water. Then to add insult to injury, you have an inhibition of antidiuretic hormone, ADH. So that is normally what helps refuel or rehydrate based upon where your levels are at. When that hormone is down, you do not have the self-regulation to retain water in the right spots. So this is going to increase your risk for injury, but it's also going to decrease performance. So we come back to this whole like, okay, amazing athletes that still party hard. Okay, they can probably still push it and prefrontal cortex their way through it, but are they flirting with serious injury and not even realizing it because of the chronic dehydrated state they're in and lack of possible muscle contraction? Maybe it's happening in small stability muscles. The bottom line is if you were to start looking at the data, you'd probably be able to find that there is an increased risk in people that drink more as far as injury is concerned versus people that don't. You just have to ask yourself the question, if alcohol is a poison, is it something you really want to be taking in if you're worried about your athletic performance? There are much better ways now to combat the fatigue and combat the soreness and the stress that comes with being someone that exercises a lot or an athlete. Just to give you a little bit of some tips on things that you could implement, you could try things like magnesium. Okay, mess around with varying magnesium dosages to try to see if you get a calming effect. Mess around with things like theanine. Mess around with things like GABA. Okay, mess around with various types of adaptogenic mushrooms, ashwagandha, rhodiola rosea for other adaptogens, lion's mane. All these things can even be mildly mood altering if you take them in high enough amounts. Okay, there's also things like kava. Kava is huge. Now, some people will say that kava is hepatotoxic, but it all depends on the filtration. It's less about the pure kava extract and more about are you getting some of the saponins and the other components that are in it, right? So you don't just want like any basic kava. Again, not a plug for a product. The one that I do like is called True Kava. It's really, really clean. So that's one that you could try because that's going to affect the brain in a very similar way to alcohol without the impairment and without a lot of the drawbacks. So that's like a Fijian drink. You see it a lot in the South Pacific Islands, see it in Hawaii a lot. My humble opinion is it feels better than alcohol because they don't feel dirty and gross. And anyhow, if you absolutely must drink alcohol, probably the most important thing that you should pay attention to as an athlete is going to be proper hydration. So if you're mixing a drink, like maybe you're using vodka or something like that, vodka and water or vodka and soda, whatever, try adding electrolytes to it. Okay, I use the Element electrolytes. I'm a big fan of them. Okay, they're high in sodium. They have a little bit of potassium, magnesium. Another thing you can do in addition to making or mixing drinks or just adding Element or electrolytes to your lifestyle, like 2.5 grams of creatine. Okay, what that's going to do is that's going to help draw water into the muscle cell, keep you a little more hydrated. Again, it doesn't make it okay to drink like a fish, but it can help counteract at least the dehydration effects. As always, keep it locked in here on my channel. I'll see you tomorrow.